Hello, welcome back to yet another Website Depot podcast. As ever, I'm your host, Greg Benevent, and I'm once again lucky to be joined by Noël Dombroski. Noël, how you doing there?
Doing pretty good today, Greg. How you doing?
Good. This is, for those of you watching, this is, I believe, the first fully vaccinated episode of this podcast between Noël and I. I'm still doing it in the same chair I was. I mean, I've been out and about more. Are you still in the same place? I know you got the background there going. Are you outside at the coffee shop or park? Or...
No, maybe next time I will, and you can have the ambience around me. I'm still in my house.
I had actually, we were a little bit behind the scenes. For those of you watching this, we had planned to do it a few days back, and I was like, oh, I'll do it outside a coffee shop. And I went there before Noël messaged me. I found out that the coffee shop had closed, and none of my friends had told me during the pandemic. So I was going to be outside. I was going to be like, oh, we're back in a world that had, like, I'm walking up the hill. I see the for lease sign, and it takes my mind a minute. But don't take any of that as a sign to get back out in the world. If you've been fully vaccinated, get out there and get moving. There's all kinds of new things that you. But that said, it's not like the digital world is going away. You're still going to be able to take advantage of that to grow your customer base. And I think something we have in that regard is coming up. Noel's going to talk to us a little bit about today. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. So I think something that we've kind of talked about a little bit, something that's going to kind of stick with us after the pandemic, is the accessibility and that kind of universal connection that we all kind of got out of the pandemic. And the ease of access to things like courses or Q&As or discussion. You know, a lot of people went back and are doing online school over the pandemic. A lot of people have been picking up other hobbies, etc. And we're still going to want to be able to do those things from home, I think, while doing all this other stuff going out. And I think this is where businesses, we kind of do this already with a lot of our clients, can benefit from, whether it is a live stream or doing things like Clubhouse or Facebook's Clubhouse like platform, hosting discussions, and you know, if you can share that information and kind of create those spaces online for people, I think you're still going to get those returning customers coming back to listen to what you have to say.
Gotcha. No, that makes so much sense. I mean, it just, you can just as easily access a podcast, a Clubhouse, a Zoom. Well, maybe not so much Zoom, but when you are in the park, when you are at the beach, when you are at the mall or the store. Now, you mentioned Clubhouse, which I have a base level of understanding of. And I'm going to throw this out there, what I assume it is. And you can let me know if I'm even remotely correct with this. It's almost basically like it's a thing where a group or a person will say like, hey, we're scheduling a Clubhouse meeting for X and X amount of time. And they'll open it up to others. And then when you get there, this person will talk and you can talk too. And it's good for lectures and comedy and almost like a radio meeting kind of thing. Is any of that true, or am I off base there?
No, you're very close. I think party line is a great way to put it. I think what Clubhouse and what we're finding, people like Reddit and Facebook, you know, Clubhouse is a little bit older. It's been out for some time. I think now kind of like what we've seen with TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels is everyone is creating their competitor version of Clubhouse. And so you kind of, you know, you're not limited to this one platform. I know Clubhouse is exclusively that kind of, you know, the group talk. Whereas if you already have a following on Facebook, you already have a following on Twitter, this might be the place to do that. But looking at things like Reddit, you know, is a great example, because I think things like Clubhouse, what it is it's the party line with a moderator. So you have the power to kick people. You have the power, you know, you can spotlight, you can do all these things. So picture something like a Reddit, an AMA, and Ask Me Anything. And this is essentially what you do with Bilal, you know, once or twice a month is you ask him anything. So that version is, you know, it's Zoom, it's you guys, something the Facebook affiliate or Clubhouse, you can have that lecture and you can spotlight someone, you can open it up for them to ask their question themselves. Or you can, you know, it's a little more, it is more like that lecture space, and people feel maybe like they have a little more agency as well in their to ask things. I think that too, there's a certain amount that comes with tone that you can't get out of typing. I know I have the pleasure of sitting in on a lot of USC does these kinds of lectures and stuff, and they'll spotlight you, ask your question. And I think that, you know, especially in terms of talking to an authority, whether it is, you know, a lawyer or, you know, for example, I got to ask a question of a screenwriter, there is something to be said for that direct especially if it's something you have a passion for, that direct access, and your ability to kind of to have that connection, because I think that especially in terms of what Bilal talks about is very sensitive. You have
Right.
personal injury, you have work injury,
Oh
and
yeah.
he also, I know that like there's so much vulnerability in that. There's a difference, I think, between submitting your comment or your message on Facebook, or being able to with your whole chest ask what you would like to know. And I think that also is true, for other industries. And if you wanted, even if you're doing paint and sip and you're answering questions about paint, I think that there's, I don't know, like whatever your business is, you can kind of open up this platform. And if you have something to give, ask me anything. I think another example is
Right.
Scope with the insurance, the other podcast show
Yes.
that you did.
I see. No, I mean, that makes so much sense. It's interesting because I was just, yesterday I was writing for the Website Depot site about ways that you can get more testimonials and all that kind of thing. And even if it's you transcribe something that you're told, and it didn't hit me until I heard you talking, like, Clubhouse would be absolutely perfect for that. I mean, you could even call it the name of your company town hall. And then folks come in, ask you questions or say things, and you can take it in stride and do what you want with it. It's funny. I was hearing you talk, and you mentioned the thing about vulnerability, and I had thought of like the opposite way. I mean, it was, you were comparing Clubhouse to Facebook or Twitter, with like, as in, it's you can say something as opposed to just typing it. And I saw it in a way like, it's, while still vulnerable, in a way you're protected in a way that you might not be over Zoom, because like, again, it's just you saying it. Like, obviously that's still not at all easy, and that's very much a thing that's still vulnerable, but it's not the same as doing it with your video on, with your background, your set. You could, so I think it opens that up to people, maybe some folks being a little more open and a little more honest and a little more able to put themselves out there than they might not be on a platform like where we literally are right now.
Exactly. Especially if you have things like, if the form of your Q&A, I know a lot of people open it up, like, comment on this post and we'll answer your Q&A later. You might not want to leave that question up for 2 days for people to pick at, if you are shy, if you're like, I'm nervous to ask this question. And I think that too is where, if you're where you can have guest speakers on, or friends or affiliates, if you're a skincare company and you want to have a skincare expert on, it's like, this is Dr. So-and-so. She's an expert in skin and aging. If you're doing a Clubhouse, you're doing a lecture, first of all, it's a great way to draw people in and pay attention to you, because you're saying, first of all, we have the authority to get this doctor on who knows what they're talking about. So obviously our brand, or, if it's not a doctor, it can be an esthetician, it can be somebody, another authority, it can be somebody on your staff who is an authority, but what you're doing is you're creating this lecture space. And people get excited because you can go in and you can ask an esthetician, you can ask someone, and there's something about, I think we all, especially if it is a free opportunity or lecture or party line, how often do you get to be in the same room as someone who is, top of their field in, skin aging or mold remediation? Like, if you're like, oh my God, I've had this spot on my like ceiling that has smelled for 2 weeks, and Veronica's going to be live on Saturday. I can't wait to jump in and ask her about it. Because the other thing is, you can look at the mold and you can say it's about 3 centimeters diameter. You can go back and forth. You don't often get that follow-up question when you have those forums where you type it and they may never come back to you. You might be like, oh, okay, well then what about this in the chat? But you're flooded.
That makes so much sense. I mean, it allows you to get out more information better. It provides for that better access. It really provides for this more human conversational thing. I mean, in a way that even being on the phone might not. I mean, if you mentioned Scope, I mean, obviously they're open at all times, day or night, but I could also see, an actual phone call feeling more stilted and less likely for you to say everything you needed to, versus being in, the back and forth, the flow of something on like Clubhouse. And again, we mentioned Clubhouse because it's something different, this thing, but you can achieve this in many different ways. There's always going to be a place, like we mentioned with the Facebook and the Twitter, all that. There's always going to be some way for you to open it up to your customers. But Clubhouse is a very low key, easy to use way to do so. It's one that, again, I keep coming back to, feels like just it requires even less preparation than this. I mean, I was a couple minutes late for this particular podcast because I had to shave. It's a change. I put on a polo shirt here for this. I mean, these are not concerns that you need have in the Clubhouse meeting. At all of these little things. I mean, and it sounds like, oh, that's not a big deal, but you're a busy business person, that kind of thing, that kind of time crunch can absolutely add up.
Yeah, it's almost like it's an introduction to I don't know, it's like the non-committal version of allowing your business to have a podcast, like an audio podcast. The other thing too, you mentioned the phone call. To preface, familiar with our clients, I know if you called, Bilal, if you called Scope, they would never put any obligation on you. They're always the first to offer information. But from the other side of it, making the step to make that phone call does feel very committal. And, if you're having a podcast, it's like, there are things that we might not even be necessarily like 1,000% interested in, but we would pop in to ask a question anyway. I would do that in school, where if this is bothering you, it feels very non-committal. It's like, I am going to ask this question. And because you've taken that pressure off them, they might come back to you. If you love something, let it go. If you answered their question in a way that like gives them confidence, you don't have to sell yourself to them. You already did it with what you know. And so it's instead of, it's almost kind of playing hard to get. And if you consistently, the other thing is consistency, Bilal is fantastic because Bilal, it's the Saturday, you do the live, and have it out by Monday.
Oh, yeah.
It's always, generally that schedule. If you keep that schedule, the first couple things, you might only get a couple questions. But if people know, all right, the second Saturday of the month, I've been thinking about this, I'm going to take it to Bilal because I know he does this. That consistency is going to build an audience, and it's going to build people coming back to your brand because you're going to show that you're reliable, but not only that you have that consistency and that you consistently have something to offer.
No, and again, it's one more way to show like, hey, you're a professional that can do this. If you're the kind of person that can keep to a schedule, Saturdays at sometime between 10 a.m. to noon, then you're someone that will be, that can take on the responsibility of a person's case, of solving a person's problem. I was just thinking when you were sitting there talking about that, about how like Clubhouse really can be a backdoor way for your company to have a podcast. I would even take that a step further and be like, hey, if you're, if you've been thinking about doing a podcast, but you're worried about, geez, what would I talk about? What would I do? Well, try it out on Clubhouse. Just see what that happens. Because if you bring in a couple folks to come ask questions and you start talking to them about what you're doing and they ask questions, you are podcasting. There's no other step after that. You're doing the thing right there. And if you can do it with somebody asking you the questions, then you can absolutely do it with, talking to a coworker or talking to someone like me or someone like Noël or something. You'll be able to do that same thing there. It's just I only say that because I know I've certainly talked to clients who very rightly ask like, I'd like to do a podcast, but I don't know, I'm not a person that necessarily talks. Well, one, yes you are, and two, you're an expert at what you know. So that's always going to come out whether you're talking to me or one of your customers or prospective customer or something like that. So if you're not sure about can you do a short podcast, the Clubhouse is absolutely a very empowering way to practice.
And no, you really nailed it, because I think, and in terms of whether it's a podcast or making videos or any content where you can express yourself, if you're an expert in your field, two fantastic examples once again are Veronica and Bilal. You ask them the right question, they're fascinating to listen to.
Right.
And maybe I'm biased with the end of these things.
No, it's absolutely true. I mean, yeah. I mean, there'll be time. I mean, I don't mean to interrupt, but there will be times where I'm like, did I ask too basic a question? And then like 3 minutes later, they're still talking, and I'm like, no, I didn't. But yeah, you were saying.
But what's cool about that is it's almost like it's like riding a bicycle and like doing a trick at the same time. Like, let's say like if you know how to ride a bicycle already, Bilal and Veronica eat and breathe this stuff every day. When they're answering your question, they don't have to think about, they're not thinking about how does this work, because they know it. They eat, sleep, and breathe it. They can think about the customer instead. And it's about, it's about what you can convey while you're talking about what you know. And so it's almost doubly impressive because they don't have to work hard to show us that they know their stuff. It's like, not only are you showing me and I'm just floored by how easily it is coming to you, but you know, what are you doing at the same time? And a great example is Bilal, because and I think in terms of attracting the people that you are best meant to help, you can hear the compassion in his voice. And I think that it's very clear. And the other thing is, you know, it's, you learn so much about people and businesses by how they spend their time. You know, he doesn't make a dime off of giving this information out, you know, on and you can tell. And so it reads, and it's like, you know, there isn't, the work isn't like showing people that you know what you're talking about, because you do. It's showing people that you care. And if you're just consistent and you just do this, and it's like, you know, if people can see, whether they think it outright or not, in the back of their head, they're like, this guy is here every other Saturday of the month. He's here for me and he's not making a dime out of it. What does that say for what he's going to do for me when I hire him? You know, like, this is the kind of person that goes above and beyond. Scope breaking down the insurance and the outline and everything from Veronica demonstrates such care. Like, that's free information that they don't make a dime off of, but you've come out of that podcast and those clips so much smarter and like knowing more about your policy. And so I think that as a business, how better can you show how much that you care and how available you are than by making yourself available?
No, that is real well said. And I would even just go a step further in that, with particularly in the case of Veronica talking about the insurance and, you know, the mold remediation. As I understand it, from having done a couple of those with her, and obviously I don't know all of the ins and outs myself, it's even beyond her sharing that information for free. That's something Scope doesn't necessarily have to do. Like, it's not, you know, they're there to fix your home. They're under no obligation to be like, okay, and here's how to make, you know, work this insurance thing. They do that because, you know, it is one more way to genuinely help customers. I mean, it's these businesses are about so much more than simply doing the work itself. And that is the kind of person that, hey, you're going to want on your side when things do go awry, when you do have the mold, when you do have the personal injury, that kind of thing. So those are those little things you can really look for, like you said, that empathy.
Especially in industries that in the past, you know, if you've had a bad experience, some of these businesses in that industry can be predatory, whether it is personal injury, you know, car, etc. And so to have that already, and to already, I think some people are already kind of nervous in terms of, you know, even anything home repair. How often have we been sued for something and it was like, how much did you, what, you know? And so to see, you know, especially these two in particular are such powerful examples, because first of all, Bilal is someone you have to trust. When he talks about you're in so much pain, there shouldn't be other things you have to worry about. That speaks to me, you know. And so that tells me so much about him as a lawyer. And especially, you know, when it's so easy to get taken advantage of in that sphere. Same thing with everything that Scope does. You have just suffered a tragedy, or not, or you've got a big mold spot. But even then, that could, like, you watch the insurance podcast, that could put you up for days and you know, in a rental. And so when you hear, it's so important to show people how you talk about these things and how you manage these things, because that compassion is going to speak so much more than like any Facebook ad you're gonna run. You know, it's like, who am I gonna want on the phone with me when I'm like, you know, looking through my smoke charred photo albums? I'm absolutely gonna call Scope. Like,
no, 100%. And you mentioned, and everything you said was right. It is so much more potent than the best Facebook ad. And yet the best way to go forward is to have this podcast of empathy and humanity as well as the Facebook ad. I mean, that's what's so nice about this. It's not an either or in most cases. You know, it's all these things working together, which, you know, the groups we've mentioned certainly do a very good job of as well, between Bilal and
it doesn't have to be like a big, I mean, you could be like the coffee shop too, and you can still I don't think it has to you know, like, these are two very weighty things. It's like, you know, did your house burn down, like, or can you not work because you're injured? But you know, like the paint and sip, like you can do Twitch, do paint alongs, have people ask questions in the stream, or you know, That was more visual, so that's definitely more of a streaming thing than something like Clubhouse. But you don't have to be, you don't have to be this textbook authority on anything to do any of this. And if you want any great example, you can go and listen to any of the interviews that you've done with our clients, because they're fascinating. There's so much that people have to offer.
No, it's really true. I mean, there is no such thing as just a business anymore, or it's just we just do the work and then we go to bed. I mean, it's there's always this other aspect to it. I mean, the one I always come back to if we're talking about fascinating things is when I was talking to the Jay Gudiel landscaping guy, and he was explaining to me what the special chemical they put on the lawnmower blades to keep viruses from coming into the grass. And I thought of how many times, like as a teenager, I cut someone's lawn and was doing nothing like that. Like there was no, there were viruses everywhere. I thought it was cutting the lawn, and yet a real professional that really does care about people beyond doing the job is going to be aware of and use things like that.
Absolutely. And how else will, if people don't have the opportunity to work with you, how better can people get a sense of the care? I actually, that's another podcast I think about a lot, because that was something I learned, the things they do in between cutting lawns, so the lack of cross-contamination. Because not only that, you're setting a standard for your industry. So now, now that you said that, anybody who's watched that podcast, next time somebody goes to mow their lawn, they're going to be like, do you put the thing on the, because guess what, if they didn't, who are you calling? You're calling,
right. You wanted deceased lawn? What are you doing? Like, so we'll sum it up. It's podcasting and Clubhouse are out there. And if you aren't sure podcasting's right for you, Clubhouse is a great way to literally a test drive for a podcast there. So give that a shot. Well, that's all I had. That feels like it covered it pretty well there, Noel. Do you have anything else?
No, I think if I can just impart one thing, I think that businesses should try to plan one live stream event per month. That's the bold statement to throw out there to start. Because if nothing else, it challenges you to think, what can we do on live? Because there is, if we've learned nothing else in the last year, it's that you have no excuse. Everyone can do something. And with the first 2 or 3 live streams, we were going to get like 3 viewers, 4 viewers. Okay. By the 6th or 7th one, you're going to have that if you're consistent, you're going to build that. And it's about that patience, and it's about not being afraid to put yourself out there, because it's nerve-wracking, especially if you're not very outgoing, to put yourself on recording. Open yourself up to ask those questions. But if you do it, just do one a month. It doesn't even have to be big. It can be Instagram Live. I'm going to answer your questions, just practice. And it's only going to help you.
That is a great idea. I mean, that's and if it doesn't help you in those first couple where you maybe only get a couple people to watch, or maybe nobody watches, but as you said, it will have these trickle down effects well beyond simply your social. It'll help you with talking to it'll even help you talking to customers and clients online. I mean, it's even just in words. I mean, every little part of opening up like that is absolutely going to be a boon for your company. So usually we leave you with something you can do. Today we're leaving you with homework. There's something your business can do after this. But it's serious. That's a great idea, Noel. That really, really is. Well, cool. Well, all right. Well, let us know how it went for you. We'll check it out there in the comments below this. And on behalf of Noel Dombroski and Website Depot, my name's Greg Benevent. Take it easy. Have a good night.